ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Rage Bros Inc. Today we are checking out the Holy Paladin. Going to show you guys a quick guide, basically to get you started, or if you are a veteran of Holy Paladin, maybe this will help you out further along your progression as far as being a healer. Right now I just want to quickly open up to explain where I am as far as a healer, so I'm not just talking out of my butt, trying to basically explain that I do have some kills under my belt. I have gone 7 out of 7 heroic high maul ahead of the curve, and then also I'm 9 out of 10 normal and heroic Blackrock Foundry. Unfortunately I haven't been able to kill Blackhand quite yet on heroic, but it is to come. He is very tough, especially on heroic, and I do not look forward to it on mythic. So that being said, we'll just move straight into it. Now, I've been playing a Holy Paladin since BC, and the first day I fell in love with them, and I've not stopped yet, obviously, playing them for a very, very long time. But what we'll do is we'll break this up and go kind of starting into talents. Now, talents are obviously different in the new expansion. They've been changed a little bit to where you can use whatever you want. But what I've noticed is kind of a quick cookie cutter idea of a Holy Paladin. You've got your basic talents here, which is at level 15 you have Speed of Light, which increases the movement speed by 70% for 8 seconds. I find that for PvE to be very good. It gets you out of those situations sometimes where you need that quick boost. Long Arm of the Law is, to me, more for PvP, and then Pursuit of Justice just doesn't really have that speed boost that I'm looking for. It's kind of, it's passively you're 15% faster, but it's really nothing special to me. So I did go with Speed of Light there. Now, the next one is level 30 talents, which is Fists of Justice, Repentance, or Blinding Light. Fists of Justice I went with. It basically shortens down the cooldown on your stun ability, Hammer of Justice. And so it takes that spot, turns it into Fist of Justice, and the stun is better, I think, personally. There's not really much application for PvE. There are some of those situations where you can help with ads and trash and things like that, but it really comes down to just a stun in the end. Repentance is pretty good sometimes when you don't have a class in your raid that can stun something for a long time, then Repentance is always good. And Blinding Light really is kind of like a, I would almost say an arena talent, but don't judge that completely. Don't take my word for that. There is applications for anything possibly on all these and talents and things like that. So I just went with Fist of Justice. For the level 45 talent, you have Selfless Healer, Eternal Flame, or Sacred Shield. Now, Selfless Healer has always been that kind of that PvP feel to it. Last expansion, Selfless Healer was pretty good if you could handle it. It's a lot more micro, but if you could handle it, Selfless Healer definitely did have a step ahead of Eternal Flame and Sacred Shield. But it takes a lot of micro, and it takes a lot of management. And then you also have Sacred Shield. Sacred Shield, they changed it a little bit, but at the same time, it's still kind of expensive for what it does. They say that it's equaled out to Eternal Flame, but in actuality, there's a lot more uptime and management that you have to have with Eternal Flame, with Sacred Shield. Whereas Eternal Flame is more of just a passive thing that you're always going to be using with Word of Glory. So basically, Eternal Flame takes the place of Eternal Glory, and every time you use it, it puts a hot on somebody. I think it's a lot better than Sacred Shield. My opinion is, I really wish that they would buff Eternal Flame, but, Holy Pallies are pretty good right now. They don't really need a buff, but man, Eternal Flame would be really cool if they'd make that hot a little bit stronger so you could actually see the difference in healing. And obviously Sacred Shield is pretty cool. They changed it to 3 charges, and obviously keep it on the tanks and some other target that's taking some serious damage. You can always switch up where you put your shields, but there's a lot of management to that and a lot of upkeep, and it gets pretty expensive as far as healing goes, as far as mana goes. But it's up to you. But Eternal Flame, as far as cookie cutter goes, Eternal Flame is passive. It's going to be taking your Word of Glory, taking the spot of Word of Glory, and you can just go boom, bam, boom, heal. So now we'll go into the level 60 talents here. Hand of Purity, Unbreakable Spirit. I used to use Unbreakable Spirit. I'm not really going to talk about Hand of Purity it's a good talent, but man, I just really never find a place to use it. Now, there's always the argument that you can find, like I said, and I'm going to keep touching up on this, is that you can always find places to put these talents in fights and things like that. But for me, the cookie cutter is Clemency. Clemency, you always have, basically it's your hand abilities all now have 2 charges. And so you've got your Hand of Sacrifice, Hand of Freedom, Hand of Protection, blah, blah, blah. You've got 2 charge of that, which is really, really good, especially on a lot of those fights in Blackrock Foundry, when you can be throwing out those Hand of Protections. Hansgar and Frosgar, for example, or however you say their name, that fight, when the I don't know what they're called, but when the gigantic blocks come down, you see the little orange circle, they'll come down and they'll hit you a ridiculous amount. Well, putting 2 Hand of Protections out there and then bubbling yourself basically mitigates 3 people from taking damage for that certain amount of time. Obviously, these don't last for very long, but 10 seconds is a lot better than 0 seconds. It's a lot better. It gives people 10 seconds to stop, take a deep breath, recharge, reset. So I think Clemency is really good. Unbreakable Spirit has its applications, reduces the cooldown of your Divine Shield, Divine Protection, and Lay on Hands by 50%. I did use this a long time with my Lay on Hands spec, which is basically you also take a talent that your Lay on Hands... let me see if this is real quick. I have to go back. Divinity increases the cooldown of your Lay on Hands by 2 minutes, but causes it to give it a 10% of your maximum mana back. So I would take Unbreakable Spirit for that, so that way the cooldown on Lay on Hands isn't so ridiculous, and you can actually use it 2 times in a fight, which is very cool. But, it's hand in hand on that one, but as far as cookie cutter goes, Clemency is going to be your go-to. You are very utility-based as a Holy Paladin, and so you have those utilities, and why not add Clemency to it to where you have double those utilities? 2 Hand of Sacrifice, amazing for Hansgar and Frosgar, as well as Hand of Protection. That fight is designed really well for Clemency. And then, so, I picked Clemency for that. Level 75 talents, you've got Holy Avenger, Sanctified Wrath, and Divine Purpose. Right now, Holy Avenger and Divine Purpose, I know Divine Purpose has some applications, Holy Avengers has some applications, but, man, I don't know, it's a tough situation when you go into certain fights. They do have their applications, and so you can read up on more on those. But as far as taking, if you're a new healer, taking Sanctified Wrath is a really strong ability. Avenging Wrath lasts 50% longer and grants more frequent access to one of your abilities while it casts. So, as Holy, it reduces your Holy Shock by 50% and increases its critical strike by 20%. Sanctified Wrath is a really strong talent, and I would suggest a lot of people get that, because overall, it's just universally the best talent to take for most fights. You're never really going to go wrong in a situation like that. Now, for level 90, you've got Holy Prism, Light's Hammer, Execution Sentence. Execution Sentence, I would recommend never using, unless it's a fight where it's like strictly tank damage. That doesn't really happen very much these days in these rates, but again, has its applications. Both of these do. But Execution Sentence I see more as for PvP, and I know a lot of other people do agree with that. But you can use it. It's the beauty of the new talent system, is you can use whatever the hell you want and do whatever you want. But you're going to have an easier time going with Holy Prism. Holy Prism is a beam of light turns a target into a Holy Prism. An enemy target takes takes a certain amount of damage and radiates a certain amount of damage to 5 nearby allies. A friendly target is healed for 2k, so if you do it backwards, you can click on one of your players, one of the people with you, heal them, and then it radiates out and hits all the enemies around it. So it's a very cool talent. Light's Hammer. Now, I've been really contemplating Light's Hammer on some certain fights. It's a tough situation, but really it comes down to which fights will need it. But in the end, a cookie cutter spec, Holy Prism is the way to go. You can never go wrong with Holy Prism. Light's Hammer has its application when you see when the raid is grouped up a lot and taking a lot of damage. Let's say for instance, Heroic Flamebender. Light's Hammer is very good for when she channels that ability that basically the raid takes ridiculous amount of damage. And while they're all stacked when they're supposed to be stacked, you drop Light's Hammer and they're healed for a good amount. Holy Prism, kind of tough to use in that situation. So you can switch around and things like that, but you're still going to have a good time with Holy Prism. It's still going to heal for a lot. And then you can always pop Devotion Aura during that or whenever your raid leader calls it out. But yes, Holy Prism, definitely the way to go. Always use it on the... Yes, Holy Prism, definitely the way to go. Always use it on the boss. And it really doesn't have a good application for healing directly onto a target and then sprouting out to the mobs around. Most of the time you're just going to be doing well with hitting the mob and then healing the targets that are around you. So Holy Prism definitely for that one. Level 100, I have switched around these and tried them all differently. Beacon of Faith, Beacon of Insight, and Saved by the Light. I noticed that Beacon of Insight and Saved by the Light mostly is really good for PvP application, but it does have its applications for raids, and you can always find a place to put it. However, the best one right now is Beacon of Faith, which basically is, it literally gives you a second Beacon of Light, which that is like, it's amazing, especially because Beacon of Light is not as strong as it used to be. So having two beacons, put one on each tank, heal the raid, boom. You know, you're going to have a good time. So, that's basically the talents right there. Not really too much of a difference. I mean, this is really a cookie cutter spec, and it's really not going to take you anywhere other than success. You're not going to have issues with this. If you are, then play up a little bit. But other than that, I mean, it's not really... It's going to be good. Now we'll go to Glyphs real quick. Glyphs, I have Glyph of Merciful Wrath, which reduces the cooldown and effects of Avenging Wrath by 50%. Now, Avenging Wrath is ridiculously strong. When you put Glyph of Merciful Wrath on it, it does cut it by 50%, but that's why you have the talent here that makes it Sanctified Wrath, which makes it last longer, and then your crit 20% more with Holy Shock. So that 50%, yeah, it kind of sucks, but at the same time, it reduces that cooldown, so you're using it more and more and more and more. And because of how strong Avenging Wrath is, that 50% is not going to really do much. That Avenging Wrath is always for that, oh shit, I need to get out of this type of situation, where you need big heals, and you're just not cutting it at the time. So having it up 50% more of the time during a fight is really good. You can use it many times. As you can see, the timer on it right now, the cooldown is 1.5 minutes. That's ridiculously low and amazing for cooldown. So you'll be using that a lot during fights. Now I have, for the second talent, I have Glyph of Hand of Sacrifice. Hand of Sacrifice no longer redirects damage to the Paladin. So having Clemency, which gives you 2 charges of Hand of Sacrifice, this is going to come into play very well, especially like Hansgar and Frosgar. Because if you don't have that, you put Hand of Sacrifice on those 2 tanks when they're about to get, the one tank that's about to get knocked out with a ridiculous amount of damage, you're going to take a ridiculous amount of damage, and it's just not okay. So Hand of Sacrifice, you should be using Hand of Sacrifice in every single fight. I mean, that's the honest truth about it. Just an amazing talent. Glyph of Flash of Light. When you Flash of Light a target, it increases your next heal done by that target within 7 seconds for 10% extra. Seconds by 10%. You're going to be using Flash of Light a lot. You see a lot of pallies out there. If you check a lot of the logs right now, Holy Pallies aren't using Flash of Light as much as they should be, and that's why there's not very many of them ranking. There are a good amount ranking right now, and they are some of the top healers, but there's a lot of people falling behind, especially because a lot of healers have had a tough time dealing with the new ways of how to heal and things. So that is definitely a good thing to have right there. Always have your Flash of Light going. Be able to control that and everything. So now we go into the minor glyphs. None of these are really important at all. Just more for aesthetic, more look and things like that. And it's really up to you. I'm not gonna right now. If you want to know, I've got Glyph of Winged Vengeance, Glyph of Luminous Charger, and Glyph of Fire from the Heavens. It has nothing to do with how you heal. Do whatever you want with that. So now we're gonna go basically to. We're going to go to Enchance. So Paladins are a little bit different this expansion. Crit is a lot stronger than it's always been, than it's usually been. And it's very important for Holy Paladins right now. Our heals are not that strong, unfortunately. Our normal non-crit heals, let's be honest guys, they're not that strong. It's unfortunate, but that's how it works. The more crit you have, the less you have to deal with those low-powered heals. You know, when you... Let me just show you this Holy Light real quick. If it doesn't crit, well, it crit, because my crit's a little bit higher than normal, but okay, this is not a good explanation of showing you this. It just keeps critting. It just shows you how good crit... Okay, so right there at 24k, that's... I mean, there's a lot of raid damage going out right now, and so that's not really helpful. Obviously, right now, why I've been critting so much there is because I have some good crit here. Now... critical chance, basically going to put it wherever you can. Right now on my neck, on my back, on my rings, and my gems. They're all critical right now. Anything that I can get crit on, I do that. As far as your weapon goes, you don't want to be using crit because it's not really reliable. Mark of the Shadow Moon is going to be the best because Mark of the Shadow Moon enchant on your weapon is going to give you a lot of spirit and it's going to give you a lot of intel back, which you're really going to need for these new raids. So be watching out for that always. Alright, now as far as like buffs and things like that, most of the time you're going to get a feast in your raids, sometimes you're not going to, but if you do need to buy food, Black Rock barbecues are really good. They give you 100 crit, which is amazing, and so I would definitely go with that. Definitely try and get your hand on Focus Augment runes. Those will increase your intel by 500 or by 50. Sorry, I wish it was 500. No, but it's by 50, which is always a step up above everything else. So it's really good. As far as flask go, you want to use Draenic or the Greater Draenic Intellect Flask, which gives you 250 intel for an hour, which is really great. They have changed the Aurelius's Whispering Crystal. So I don't use that as much as I used to because now it actually shows you how much a stat. It's only giving you 100 intel, which is 100 intel in Stam, which is just not going to help you out at all. So you definitely want to go with that Drainer Intellect Flask. Now, so after Enchance, the next thing that's really important is what kind of gear you're getting. Now, in this expansion, in Warlords of Draenor, gear is very tough to come by that's best in slot. Most of the time you're going to be fighting with Death Knights, things like that, because intel switches to strength on as you can see right there, you can see that the little strength is blacked out. Well, if I was back in Red Spec, then the strength would come in and the intel would go away. So you're rolling against a lot more plate wearers, which is very tough. Right now your stat priority is really critical strike and mastery. Those are going to be your top stats. Obviously crit strike, mastery, multi-strike, haste. Haste is tough to figure out because haste is strong, but at the same time, there's a lot of requirements that revolve around haste and what you need for it. You know, if you want haste, you need high crit. If you want haste, you need high mana regen. Things like that to keep up that, you know, that ridiculous amount of speed healing. So making sure that, you know, your first stat is always crit. Crit is very important, and it's arguable that crit and mastery can go hand in hand. As far as output, or not output, but just overall healing, because those mastery bubbles are truly amazing. So, you know, crit and mastery is something you really want to focus on, and then multi-strike and haste, obviously. Versatility at the lower part of the totem pole, because versatility is just not that strong right now. I believe. But, you know, you're always going to be looking for pieces that have crit multi-strike, crit mastery, haste mastery, things like that. You're never going to... Well, it's very rare that you get your absolute best in slot. It's very rare and it's tough to do and it takes a lot of time. But keeping with those stats, I definitely would suggest that. Now, as far as Spirit goes, Spirit is very strong. A lot of Spirit pieces are tough to find, and man, when you got to roll against a bunch of other healers, it's a tough time because Spirit is very rare and everybody needs it. As you can see right now, the pieces that normally should have Spirit on it don't really have Spirit on it except for my ring, and that's because I have the Iron Spike Chew Toy Heroic, which gives me a boatload of Spirit, which is really good. But that passive Spirit is just outstanding, and you should definitely get it. Right now, I've got a ring that has crit versatility on it. I'm not happy with that, but you know, you take what you can get. You take what you can get. It's a 691 piece. It's got a lot of good stats on it, a lot of good crit, and so it's just, you know, you got to roll with the punches, basically. But yeah, definitely when you can get the Spirit pieces, get the Spirit pieces because they're very important. But don't go Spirit versatility. It's not going to help you. It's just, gross. But, you know, it's always subject to argument. Depending on how you heal, you can go through that and just trying to figure it out for yourself. But I would suggest having crit be your top stat, and followed by either mastery and multi-strike and haste. But having those stats all together and keeping up. Like right now, you can see my crit, haste, mastery are all pretty much in the close area. That leaves me with a lot of strength. Like, that leaves me with a lot of movement and being able to do whatever I want as a healer. And I'll be at the top of the meters most of the time, which is really great. Holy Paladins are very strong healers, and I really enjoy them, and I hope this guide helps you out. If you have any questions, just leave it in the comments. make sure you subscribe, and you can see some more guides that I'm going to be putting out, and some of the guides that I already have out there. Well, I hope this video helped you guys out. I really, really hope that you enjoy playing a Holy Paladin. You know, if you want to add me in game, my name's Metashock, and we can talk and stuff, and I can, you know, try and figure out what you're doing wrong, or, you know, strengths, or what you want to talk about, whatever it is. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you out. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.